Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a world measured not just in, dollars or euros, but in silken gold, the quiet shimmer of diamonds, the timeless scent of leather, the effervescence of fine champagne.
The world of luxury.
Exactly. This is the realm of the most iconic luxury brands on the planet. But the man who built this world, well, he wasn't always seen as one of them. He was, for a time, maybe dismissed as an outsider.
Right. Definitely not from that traditional background.
Today, that same man is the undisputed architect of an empire that controls over 75 of the world's most coveted luxury houses. We're talking global icons like Louis Vuitton, Dior, the unmistakable sparkle of Tiffany, the storied bubbles of Dom Perignon.
Bulgari, Rimowa, the list goes on.
It really does.
Yeah.
How did Bernard Arnault, this figure often described as a quiet strategist, manage to build a machine worth over 350 billionaires?
And perhaps the even more compelling question, according to the sources you brought us, how has he kept it not just large, but fundamentally thriving, even when the global economy and maybe the luxury market itself hits a crisis? That's the core question, isn't it? Resilience.
Welcome to a deep dive. You've shared the articles, the research, the insights into this, well, fascinating figure and his world. Our mission today is to move beyond just the headlines about net worth and acquisitions and truly try to decode the mind, the playbook, the long-term strategies of Bernard Arnault.
Get inside his thinking a bit.
Yeah, we want to understand how he thinks, how he leads, and most importantly, what you, regardless of whether you're building a global empire or just navigating your own career, can potentially learn from the man who didn't just acquire luxury brands, but arguably reshaped our very perception of what luxury, wealth, and prestige mean in the 21st century. Let's jump right into the foundation.
It's a compelling story because, as you highlighted, he wasn't born into this world of, haute couture and fine wines. He came from a different background, manufacturing, construction.
Right, industrial stuff.
Yeah, and the sources make it really clear that his success wasn't about being the flashiest or the loudest guy in the room. It was about a relentless, almost invisible focus on something much more enduring, the very long term. His vision, it just stretched far beyond immediate returns.
And that focus on the long term, this idea of thinking in decades rather than quarters, that seems to be the bedrock, really, upon which everything else was built. The sources emphasize this wasn't just a 5-year business plan. It was the start of a 50-year, maybe even a 100-year dynasty.
Absolutely. And to really get that, you have to rewind back to 1984. Arnault was just 35 years old then, which is pretty young to be making such a, monumental move. He leveraged his family's construction business, took a significant financial risk, borrowed a substantial amount of money to acquire a company called Boussac Sanfrain.
Boussac.
Now, Boussac was this sprawling French textile conglomerate, and it was struggling, heavily indebted, widely seen as kind of a messy, outdated industrial dinosaur, really on the verge of collapse.
Which, on the surface, makes zero sense, right? Why would someone who reportedly had aspirations in the world of prestige and luxury buy a failing, debt-ridden textile manufacturer? It seems completely counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does. But that's where his strategic foresight really comes into play. The sources reveal he wasn't interested in the textile mills, the paper factories, the, numerous other disconnected businesses under the Boussac umbrella.
Right.
He saw all of that as deadweight. That's a term he's actually used himself. His true singular target, the hidden gem buried deep within Boussac's diverse holdings, was the iconic fashion house, Christian Dior.
Christian Dior. Okay. And at that time, according to the sources, Dior wasn't the vibrant, globally dominant force it is today, was it?
Not at all. It was seen by many in the industry as, yes, a heritage brand, definitely, with a glorious past rooted in post-war glamour, but maybe past its prime, a bit dusty around the edges compared to newer, more dynamic names.
Kind of a fading star.
Precisely. The conventional wisdom might have been that Dior was, a fading relic. But Arnault held a fundamentally different belief. He had this conviction that true luxury, with deep roots and genuine heritage, never truly dies.
Interesting.
It doesn't vanish. It simply requires the right vision, the right kind of leadership, and crucially, significant investment to be resurrected, to find its relevance in a new era. He was convinced Dior had that dormant potential, that deep, enduring soul that just needed to be rekindled.
So he bought this massive failing company, but he wasn't interested in 90% of it. What did he actually do over the next few years?
Well, this is a critical phase that the sources really emphasize. Over the subsequent 5 years, Arnault didn't try to engineer a turnaround for the entire Boussac group. That would have been honestly overwhelming and likely futile.
Too much.
Yeah. Instead, he focused ruthlessly and systematically. He sold off nearly every asset that wasn't central to his core vision, liquidating everything from the paper mills to, believe it or not, a disposable diaper business.
Well, okay.
Generating the capital needed and shedding the debt. His entire focus, his energy, and the freed-up resources were channeled entirely into reviving Christian Dior. It was a period of intense, patient, singular concentration.
And that strategic 5-year restructuring of Boussac, that intense focus on Dior, that was really the preparation for the much bigger move in 1989.
Exactly. By 1989, he had successfully demonstrated his ability to revitalize a key luxury asset within the Boussac framework. He was ready for the next really audacious step. At the relatively young age of 40, he leveraged his position and resources to become the largest shareholder and take effective control, becoming the CEO of LVMH, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton.
Which even back then was already a pretty powerful entity, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The sources describe it as holding some of the crown jewels of the luxury world at that point. It was a merger of two French powerhouses, Louis Vuitton, the venerable luggage and leather goods maker,
Iconic.
and Moet Hennessy, the world's leading producer of champagne and cognac. Adding Dior to this mix, under his control, immediately positioned him right at the very pinnacle of the global luxury industry.
But, and this seems key, this is where that long-term vision really differentiates him. He didn't view this as the end goal, did he? Not the peak from which he might eventually exit.
Not in the slightest, no. The sources strongly contrast his philosophy with that of many contemporary CEOs who might be primarily focused on, quarterly earnings reports, short-term stock fluctuations, or maybe optimizing for a relatively quick exit strategy.
A typical playbook.
Yeah. Arnault was planting trees whose shade he might not personally enjoy for decades. His stated goal wasn't merely to build a successful business that would perform well for 5 or 10 years. It was, right from the outset, about creating and shaping a legacy, a family dynasty that would potentially last for 50, perhaps even 100 years. He aimed for enduring generational dominance.
And you see the tangible evidence of this generational thinking everywhere, even in very recent events. The sources highlighted something significant that happened just this past April, in 2025.
That was a very clear signal, wasn't it? At 76 years old, Arnault proposed, and the shareholders approved with an almost unheard of 99.18% consensus.
Wow.
Extending the mandatory retirement age for the group's CEO from 80 to 85.
That wasn't just some technical corporate governance update. It felt like a really powerful statement about continuity and, well, control.
Absolutely. The sources interpret this move as much more than just a formality. It was a deliberate public declaration that the architect isn't finished building, that he intends to continue steering the ship for the foreseeable future, ensuring a carefully managed and strategic transition over time rather than, a sudden handover. It reinforces his commitment to that multi-decade horizon.
And that strategic long-term handover is deeply intertwined with the significant roles his family plays. The sources really emphasize the involvement of his 5 children.
Oh, this is absolutely central to the dynasty vision. All 5 of his children, Delphine, Antoine, Alexandra, Frédéric, and Jean, are deeply integrated into the operational leadership of the business. And crucially, they are described not merely as heirs waiting in the wings, but as active operators who are running major divisions or brands within the empire.
Can you give us some specific examples of their roles? What do the sources say?
Certainly. Delphine Arnault, his eldest daughter, she's the CEO of Christian Dior Couture, the very brand that was his initial target back in the Boussac days.
Full circle.
Exactly. Antoine Arnault is the chairman of LVMH Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton SE, which is the holding company that sits right atop the entire structure, giving him a critical oversight role. Alexandre Arnault is the executive vice president of product and communications at Tiffany & Co., and he previously led the turnaround at the luggage brand Rimowa.
Okay.
Frédéric Arnault was recently appointed CEO of LVMH Watches, overseeing big names like Tag Heuer and Hublot after he previously led Tag Heuer itself. And Jean Arnault is involved in the watchmaking division over at Louis Vuitton.
So this isn't a case of just assigning them like symbolic board seats or titles. They are actively running significant complex parts of this multi-billion-dollar business.
Precisely. They are learning the business intimately from the operational side, gaining firsthand experience in managing creative teams, supply chains, marketing, retail, all on a global scale. The sources highlight that this isn't just preparation for a future succession, it's already embedding the family into the strategic and operational core of the entire structure, ensuring continuity of culture and vision.
The ultimate goal being?
Well, the ultimate goal, according to the sources, seems twofold. First, to ensure the continued dominance and success of LVMH, not just now, but for decades to come. And second, to secure a family legacy that will continue to shape the global luxury industry long after Bernard Arnault is no longer at the helm. It's a very deliberate, long-game approach to succession and control.
It really underscores the power of patience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's not rushing the process of succession any more than he rushed that initial build.
Yeah.
He's nurturing it over years, decades even, through the active involvement of his children.
Patience isn't merely a personal characteristic for Arnault. The sources explicitly frame it as a distinct, almost disruptive competitive advantage in the context of the fast-paced luxury market. He's quoted as saying, "Luxury is the only sector that allows you to combine heritage and innovation."
And that quote speaks volumes, really. You can't rush heritage. You can't just manufacture deep brand meaning overnight. It requires time and reverence.
Precisely. In a business landscape often characterized by, relentless pressure for immediate results, rapid growth at all costs, viral marketing stunts, and quick flips, Arnault plays a fundamentally different game. He is comfortable thinking and acting on a timeline measured in decades. This calm, disciplined patience is what enabled him to make that seemingly counterintuitive acquisition back in '84, systematically dismantle and rebuild, and then orchestrate the acquisition of LVMH. It's this quiet persistence that transformed him from just a shrewd investor into, as the sources aptly describe him, the quiet emperor of luxury.
That quiet, patient, long-term approach isn't just about the foundation of the empire. It's fundamental to how he operates today, especially when it comes to acquiring and managing brands. He doesn't just buy companies. He performs what the sources describe as acts of creative revival.
Yes. This is perhaps the most recognizable signature move in his playbook, beyond that initial masterstroke with Dior. The sources emphasize his core philosophy when it comes to acquisitions. When you buy a brand, you don't just buy a product, you buy a story, a heritage, and the right to reimagine it for a new era.
So he's not just adding logos to a portfolio.
No, not at all. He's acquiring inherent potential and undertaking the task of restoring its soul, essentially.
And the primary example used in the sources, a real masterclass in this, is the acquisition of Tiffany & Co. That was a huge deal, and it happened relatively recently.
It was monumental. In 2021, LVMH completed the acquisition of the iconic American jeweler Tiffany & Co. for a staggering $15.8 billion. At the time, it was the largest luxury deal ever recorded.
And prior to LVMH stepping in, Tiffany wasn't exactly performing at its peak, was it? The sources suggest it was somewhat adrift.
That's right. The sources describe Tiffany as a brand struggling with stagnating sales, marketing that felt increasingly outdated and frankly failed to connect with younger generations, and a cultural presence that, while still recognized, felt like it was fading compared to its historical prominence. It just wasn't living up to its potential as a truly global icon of desire and aspiration.
So what happened after LVMH took control? The sources highlight a very rapid transformation.
Yeah, the sources emphasized the change was dramatic and swift, stating that within just 2 years of the acquisition closing, everything about Tiffany felt different. Arnault immediately put key people in place, including his son Alexandre, who'd already proven his ability to revitalize brands like Loewe.
Right, the remote turnarounds.
Exactly. They brought in young, daring creatives with fresh perspectives on design and marketing.
This is where campaigns like the now famous one with Beyoncé and Jay-Z come in, I assume. That felt like a statement.
Exactly. That campaign, featuring the global superstars and a previously unseen Basquiat painting, was a clear and loud signal that Tiffany was actively and successfully speaking to a new, younger, more diverse generation. It injected massive cultural relevance and, cool into the brand. They also weren't afraid to subtly reimagine iconic elements like refining the shade and texture of the famous Tiffany blue box and integrating it into modern branding, respecting the heritage, while giving it a contemporary edge. There were fresh product lines, updated store concepts. It was a really comprehensive revitalization effort.
And the results were pretty immediate and impressive, weren't they?
They were, yeah. The sources cite that by 2023, just 2 years after the acquisition closed, Tiffany reported a remarkable 20% increase in profits. It wasn't just a slight improvement. It had been fundamentally reborn for a new era, relevant and desirable to a whole new demographic.
Tiffany is presented as the prime example, but the sources mention this revival process has been applied to many other brands within the LVMH portfolio over the years.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't some one-off success story. It's a repeatable trajectory under LVMH leadership. Think about Loewe, the Spanish leather house acquired back in the early 1990s.
Okay.
It was a relatively forgotten name, but has been transformed into a cult fashion favorite, largely through LVMH's patient investment and the appointment of visionary designers like Jonathan Anderson.
Right. He's done amazing things there.
Yeah. Berluti, once solely known for exquisite formal men's shoes, has been expanded into a full, high-end men's lifestyle brand. Other brands like Fendi, Celine, and Rimowa were either niche or experiencing difficulties before LVMH's intervention and are now flourishing global powerhouses.
So, if it's a repeatable process, what's the secret? It doesn't sound like he just stamps a standard corporate template onto these unique houses.
No, definitely not. That's the crucial insight from the sources. There is explicitly no one-size-fits-all formula. Arnault's approach is more akin to that of a curator in a museum. He doesn't dictate, he unearths, respects, and elevates. He deeply respects the brand's unique DNA, its historical roots, its craftsmanship, and its loyal customer base. He doesn't seek to erase the past, but to understand it and build upon it.
And then he injects that new energy.
Yeah.
That spark.
Exactly. Once the foundation of the brand's soul is understood and respected, he injects fresh energy. This can come through transformative creative leadership, like with Jonathan Anderson at Loewe, or a strategic digital overhaul, or carefully chosen high-profile cultural collaborations like the artist partnerships we'll probably get into later. It's about breathing new life into the existing, authentic soul of the brand.
But this curator role doesn't mean he's detached, does it? The sources point out he's hands-on in very specific, important ways.
He is, but it's targeted involvement. He's definitely not micromanaging the color palette of next season's collection or dictating daily operational minutiae.
Right.
His involvement is strategic and focused on maintaining the highest standards and that long-term vision. For instance, the sources note he personally interviews top creative directors and C-level executives being considered for leadership roles across the different maisons.
So the key talent.
The key talent. He has the final say on major advertising campaigns that really define the brand's image. And he's known to visit boutiques unannounced to directly experience the customer journey and feel the pulse of the brand on the ground.
That personal immersion must be invaluable in the intuitive world of luxury.
Yeah.
You can't get that from a spreadsheet.
Exactly. It provides him with a visceral understanding that data alone cannot replicate. He's also known, according to the sources, for being ruthless in killing projects. His words, apparently, that he feels don't meet his exacting standards for quality, desirability, or alignment with the brand's prestige.
Okay, so quality control is paramount.
Absolutely. It demonstrates a carefully calibrated balance of trusting his creative teams with freedom while maintaining absolute quality control from the very top.
This brings up another fascinating tension. How he balances the artistic, creative side with the undeniable need for commercial success. Luxury might be art, but it must also be a profitable business, right?
He seems to embody this balance. The sources highlight his belief that while designers are given significant creative freedom, that freedom operates within a clear framework of profitability and maintaining the brand's exclusive prestige.
Got it.
A product or collection must not only be beautiful, yes, he believes, but it must also make money. The sources frame this as mastering the art of luxury business, understanding that the creativity is the engine, but the commercial success is the validation that the creative vision is connecting with the customer in a commercially viable way that preserves the brand's elite status.
And his patience extends to the timing of these acquisitions as well, not just the revival process.
Absolutely. Just like building the foundation, he doesn't rush into deals. He waits, he observes the market, he watches brands that might be struggling, undervalued, or lacking clear direction. The sources describe his approach here as classic value investing, dressed in haute couture.
I like that.
Yeah, it's fitting. He's buying low, identifying the intrinsic value and potential that others might have overlooked, and then through his revival strategy, he adds immense value, turning around not just their financials, but their cultural standing.
And the LVMH approach to acquisitions seems fundamentally different from how other large conglomerates might handle them, based on the sources.
Yeah, the sources make this distinction very clear. Many conglomerates acquire companies and then look for synergies primarily through cost cutting, maybe standardizing operations, or integrating back office functions in ways that can sometimes dilute the acquired brand's unique identity or, lay off key craftsmen.
The strip and flip model sometimes.
Sort of. LVMH, conversely, invests in the brand's heritage, its creative talent, its unique craftsmanship, its retail presence. They restore its soul, enhance its desirability, and then scale it globally, always respecting its specific identity. This is why, as the sources note, his acquisitions often become significant cultural moments, not just dry financial transactions.
It really does sound like more than just business deals. They are strategic acts of creative and cultural revival.
That's precisely the point the sources make. They don't just bring brands back from the brink financially. They elevate them, redefining their relevance and status in the contemporary world.
And this philosophy of respecting individual brand identity, allowing each maison to maintain its unique soul, leads directly to the fascinating and highly effective way LVMH is structured. It's not a traditional, rigid, top-down corporate hierarchy, despite its immense size.
No, not really. The sources describe it as appearing like a vast traditional corporate empire from the outside, encompassing over 75 distinct brands across multiple sectors: fashion, jewelry, watches, spirits, retail, hospitality.
Right.
But internally, the operational model is often likened to a federation of mini-kingdoms or a decentralized conglomerate.
What does that actually mean in terms of how the brands operate day to day? How does that work?
It means each brand, or maison, as they are often called within LVMH, is granted a significant degree of autonomy. They have their own dedicated CEOs, their own creative directors with distinct visions, their own marketing teams developing unique campaigns, and their own product development pipelines. The sources explicitly state there's no centralized checklist, no one-size-fits-all mandates coming down from the central LVMH headquarters dictating every single operational detail.
And why is this decentralized structure so effective, particularly in the luxury market? What's the logic there?
Well, the reason is deeply rooted in the very nature of luxury itself. As the sources emphasize, identity is paramount. A customer's relationship with Dior is fundamentally different from their relationship with, say, a Hublot watch, or with Sephora Cosmetics, or with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot champagne.
Totally different world sometimes.
Exactly. These brands evoke distinct emotions, aesthetics, and aspirations. Trying to force them into a single homogenized corporate mold would be, frankly, disastrous.
Because it would dilute their unique voices, their essence.
Precisely. Diluting a brand's unique story, its specific aesthetic, its carefully cultivated relationship with its customer base, inevitably dilutes its perceived value and desirability in the luxury space. So, the decentralized model allows each maison to stay true to its specific essence, nurturing that unique identity, while benefiting from subtle strategic support, financial backing, and shared resources from the group level when appropriate. It's support offered from behind the curtain, as the sources say, without interfering with the brand's core creative direction.
But this autonomy doesn't mean Arnault is completely hands-off, does it? That seems unlikely.
Far from it, no. He's not in the weeds of daily brand management, but as we discussed, he's intimately involved in the critical group-level decisions. He personally interviews and approves the top leadership, the creative directors, and C-suite executives who will ultimately be responsible for steering these individual maisons.
Oh, okay.
This ensures that even with decentralization, the key people align with the group's overall standards and long-term vision.
And if a brand within this federation starts to stumble or lose direction, what happens then?
Well, the sources indicate that if a maison begins to underperform significantly or deviates too far from its core identity or strategic path, Arnault or his core team will step in. Their intervention is described as quietly, surgically, and decisively.
Not with a sledgehammer.
No, exactly. It's not heavy-handed micromanagement, but a precise intervention to correct the course and ensure the brand's continued health and alignment with the group's standards.
Louis Vuitton is arguably the most prominent example of this strategic steering from the top, isn't it? It's the group's biggest brand, and its creative direction has clearly been shaped by Arnault's decisions over the years.
Oh, definitely. It serves as a prime illustration of how he steers the largest ship from a strategic distance. When Louis Vuitton's incredible growth started to show signs of slowing down a bit in the early 2010s, he orchestrated pivotal leadership changes to inject new creative energy. He brought in Nicolas Ghesquière for women's wear, known for his modern intellectual aesthetic, and, perhaps more significantly, he appointed Virgil Abloh as the men's artistic director.
Hiring Virgil Abloh felt like a groundbreaking cultural moment in itself, didn't it? Not just a fashion appointment.
It absolutely was. The sources specifically highlight the Arnault appointment for bringing immense cultural relevance and dramatically increasing Louis Vuitton's engagement with younger audiences and the whole world of streetwear and contemporary culture. It wasn't a traditional luxury hire, but it was a brilliant move to ensure a heritage brand like LV remained right at the forefront of global cultural conversation.
And following Virgil's untimely passing, the decision to bring in Pharrell Williams in 2023 for menswear, that was another bold move.
Another fascinating example of strategic creative leadership selection at the highest level. The sources describe it as a decision that was both bold and brilliant from a branding perspective. Pharrell's not a traditional fashion designer by training, obviously.
Right.
But he is a global cultural icon with deep connections to music, art, and contemporary style. This choice signaled a continued commitment to connecting Louis Vuitton menswear to the broader cultural zeitgeist, demonstrating Arnault's understanding that the designer's role is now as much about cultural curation as it is about actual clothing design.
So he's not designing the collections himself.
No, but he is selecting the visionaries who will define the brand's creative direction for years to come. He's steering the ship with uncanny precision, as one source put it.
This unique management structure has even been analyzed by leading business institutions, hasn't it?
Yes, Harvard Business Review famously described LVMH's model as a masterclass in creative decentralization with centralized accountability.
That's a very academic phrase. How would you break that down for us in simpler terms?
Yeah, it sounds a bit dense. Essentially, it means that the creative process, the design decisions, the specific brand messaging, how a brand looks and feels, that's largely decentralized. The teams on the ground at Dior or Fendi or Louis Vuitton have the freedom to pursue their unique creative visions that resonate with their specific customer base.
Okay, creative freedom locally.
Exactly. But the crucial strategic oversight, things like financial performance targets, overall long-term brand positioning, major talent appointments, and maintaining the group's incredibly high standards of quality and prestige that remain centralized at the group level, under Arnault and his close circle.
And are brands within the group forced to work together, share resources, or cross-promote all the time?
No, the sources point out that synergies are optional, not forced. Brands can collaborate if it makes strategic sense for their identities and benefits both parties, like maybe a joint pop-up or something, but they aren't mandated to do so.
That avoids awkward pairings.
Right. It avoids the common corporate trap of trying to force awkward collaborations between brands with fundamentally different identities, which could end up diluting their individual images.
This structure provides some massive competitive advantages for LVMH, doesn't it? Seems quite powerful.
It provides crucial agility and resilience. Agility, because the individual brands can react faster to market trends or creative opportunities within their specific niche without being bogged down by layers of central bureaucracy. They can launch collections, campaigns, or initiatives more quickly.
Makes sense. And resilience because the entire empire isn't vulnerable if one specific sector or brand faces challenges.
Exactly. That diversification inherent in the structure acts as a shock absorber. If, for instance, the fashion and leather goods segment is facing headwinds in a particular year, the performance of the wine and spirits division or the jewelry sector, or even strong growth in a different geographic region can help compensate and stabilize the overall group results. If tastes shift dramatically in one area, other segments of the portfolio remain strong.
And it seems to foster a healthy internal culture as well, perhaps.
It does seem to. By giving Maison CEOs significant autonomy and ownership over their results within the group framework, it fosters a strong entrepreneurial spirit. They feel like they are building their own mini businesses, not just managing a piece of a larger machine. This encourages a culture of ownership and healthy internal competition between the brands to be the best in their category, while still adhering to the overall LVMH standards.
It all circles back to Arnault's specific brand of quiet leadership, doesn't it?
That's perfectly captured in his quote highlighted by the sources. "I don't believe in giving orders. I believe in giving a framework and finding people who are smarter than me in their niche."
That's revealing.
It is. It's a form of leadership that is powerful, not because it's loud or dictatorial, but because it's based on clear vision, selecting exceptional talent, and empowering them to lead within a defined, high-standard framework. He controls the most powerful luxury machine in history, but he does it through strategic influence and talent curation, not daily micromanagement.
True control, it seems, doesn't actually require noise.
No, it seems to require clarity of vision, consistency in upholding values, and the courage to empower incredibly talented people to lead authentically within that defined space.
And this decentralized model, this permission for each brand to maintain and nurture its unique identity, allows LVMH to do something else exceptionally well: deeply integrate art and culture into the very fabric of its business.
Oh, this is absolutely fundamental to LVMH's strategy and value proposition, according to the sources. For many corporations, art might be used as, a marketing tool, maybe sponsoring an exhibition occasionally or featuring an artist in a campaign.
Right. A bit superficial sometimes.
Yeah. For Arnault and LVMH, art and culture are not peripheral. They are fundamental to the business and are seen as a core driver of the strategic value of luxury itself.
Because luxury is about more than just the physical object, isn't it? It's the story, the feeling.
Exactly. The sources emphasize that luxury isn't defined solely by its high price tag or exquisite craftsmanship, although those are certainly essential. It's fundamentally about meaning. And that meaning is profoundly shaped and amplified by its connection to culture, creativity, and art. Arnault has spent decades strategically weaving this connection into the very DNA of LVMH's brands.
The Fondation Louis Vuitton in Paris is perhaps the most prominent and tangible symbol of this commitment, right? The building is incredible.
It is. The sources describe it as a breathtaking contemporary art museum in Paris, designed by the visionary architect Frank Gehry, representing an investment of, $135 million?
Wow.
And what's crucial is its purpose. It exists solely to house and showcase world-class contemporary art, hosting significant exhibitions and housing the LVMH collection. It is emphatically not a store or a commercial space.
So it's not about driving direct sales or even immediate overt branding in that sense.
No, the sources describe it beautifully, saying, it's not branding, it's belief. It's a powerful physical testament to the creative soul that LVMH believes is at the heart of its luxury maisons, particularly Louis Vuitton. It represents a profound long-term investment in culture itself, demonstrating that the group sees itself as a patron and participant in the art world, not just a business adjacent to it.
And this commitment extends far beyond just that one museum, right? So it's broader.
Absolutely. The sources point to a broader and sustained cultural commitment across the group. LVMH regularly funds major art exhibitions globally, participates in the restoration of historic cultural buildings across Europe, and sponsors significant cultural institutions. There's also a unique initiative called Les Journées Particulières,
Ah, yes, I've heard of that.
a global event LVMH hosts every few years. During this event, they open the doors of their normally highly secretive atelier, workshops, vineyards, and historic properties to the public.
It must be an incredible experience for the public to see behind the curtain.
It is described as a really immersive experience. It's a celebration of the often invisible craftsmanship, the human skill, the heritage that goes into creating luxury goods. But it's also a strategic move, right? A demonstration of transparency, an act of emotional storytelling, allowing customers and the public to form a deeper connection with the brands by witnessing the artistry firsthand. It's a profound form of brand building that goes far beyond traditional advertising.
And this is why customers are willing to pay such a premium, because they're buying into this whole world of culture and meaning, not just a product.
Precisely. As the sources explain, when a customer acquires a luxury item from LVMH, they aren't just purchasing leather or gold or fabric. They are buying a narrative, a connection to history, a feeling of belonging to a sophisticated universe that values art, beauty, refinement, and enduring quality. Arnault makes sure that this world isn't just a marketing facade. Through these deep investments in culture, he makes it feel authentic and real.
This is also where the collaborations with major artists come in, isn't it? Working with figures who are cultural icons in their own right.
Absolutely. The sources list names like Takashi Murakami, Jeff Koons, Yayoi Kusama, and figures like Pharrell Williams who bridge the worlds of music, art, and fashion. These individuals are described not just as artists, but as cultural forces. Collaborations with them bring immense fresh energy to the brands, attract new and diverse audiences, and inject a powerful emotional and contemporary edge into historic names like Louis Vuitton, Loewe, or Rimowa. Murakami's collaborations with Louis Vuitton, for instance, were hugely successful in making the brand feel relevant and exciting to a whole new generation back then.
It sounds like he's pushing the individual brands, the maisons, to act less like traditional retailers, more like curators themselves.
That's a key part of the strategy, yeah. The sources highlight this push for the maisons to think like curators. Every product launch needs a compelling reason, a narrative behind it. Every advertising campaign tells a carefully crafted story that evokes emotion and meaning. Even the physical stores globally are designed not just as retail spaces, but as immersive environments, almost like galleries, where customers can experience the brand's universe and its connection to art and culture.
And this profound connection to culture is also incredibly profitable, presumably.
The sources make that connection explicit. The willingness of customers to pay for that intangible value, the connection to heritage, the cultural relevance, the feeling of owning a piece of something meaningful, that's what allows LVMH to command significant premiums and achieve such extraordinary profitability levels. It's a profitability of meaning, if you like.
It really sets LVMH apart from maybe more purely commercial luxury players.
It does seem to. While many others in the fashion or retail world might be chasing fleeting trends or competing primarily on price or market share volume, Arnault focuses on building timelessness and cultivating deep cultural meaning.
And the high-profile sponsorship of the Paris Olympic Games in 2024 felt like a recent, massive example of this cultural strategy on a global stage that was everywhere.
That was indeed presented as a significant strategic alignment. It wasn't just a standard corporate sponsorship deal where you slap your logo everywhere.
Right.
It was a deliberate connection of LVMH's French heritage and its global presence to the values embodied by the Olympics. The pursuit of excellence, unity, global culture.
It wasn't about setting up pop-up stores to sell goods at the Olympics or anything like that.
Precisely. The sources emphasize this wasn't primarily about driving immediate ad hoc sales during the games. It was about showing the world on a massive stage what French luxury stands for: craftsmanship, heritage, excellence, cultural relevance, particularly significant during a period of global uncertainty. It was a powerful piece of long-term brand building and narrative control.
So luxury in the LVMH model is less about simply owning a high-priced object and more about embodying a certain perspective on the world, maybe.
That seems to be the outcome, yeah. Luxury becomes a perspective you adopt, a world you belong to, and it influences both how you see the world and how the world sees you.
And this deep integration of culture is complemented, often invisibly, by a sophisticated use of technology. It's a quiet tech approach, as the sources describe it, which is interesting.
Yes, this is another layer of LVMH's strategic brilliance that often goes unnoticed behind the glamorous facade. The sources highlight that LVMH is actually a leader in leveraging advanced technology, but they do so in a very understated, low-profile manner. You won't see them constantly hyping every new tech trend, launching speculative metaverse projects just for headlines, or using a lot of Silicon Valley buzzwords just for show.
Right, no flashy crypto initiatives or gimmicky AR filters, unless they genuinely enhance the experience, it sounds like.
Exactly. Their technology investments are strategic and focused, primarily directed towards enhancing internal operations and refining the human customer experience,
Right.
rather than being, performance art. They invest behind the scenes where it makes a real, tangible difference to the efficiency and precision of their global operations.
And the key example of this quiet tech highlighted in the sources is their internal AI platform, May.IA. What's that about?
May.IA, which stands for the Maison's Artificial Intelligence Accelerator. This is a significant enterprise-level platform developed in partnership with Google Cloud.
Okay. How extensive is its use within the group? Is it widespread?
The sources provide some pretty impressive scale metrics as of 2025. The platform apparently processes over 2 million internal queries per month and is utilized by more than 40,000 LVMH employees globally.
40,000, wow.
Yeah, that indicates a really deep integration into their daily operations.
But you won't find this AI having conversations with customers online or anything like that.
No, and that's the core principle of their quiet tech and the brilliance of Maya, according to the sources. This AI is not designed to be a customer-facing chatbot or a replacement for human interaction. Its power lies in empowering the LVMH employees, the designers, the merchandisers, the store managers, the supply chain specialists, the people who actually serve the customers. It acts as a silent, invisible engine of precision and efficiency behind the scenes.
Okay, so what are some specific examples of how May helps these employees? What does it actually do?
The sources list several key functions where Maya provides crucial support. Highly accurate inventory forecasting across their huge global network of boutiques and warehouses. Optimizing complex global supply chains to ensure products are where they need to be, when they need to be there. Powering personalized marketing efforts, particularly by analyzing millions of customer behaviors captured through their Sephora retail chain to understand purchasing patterns and preferences.
Ah, Sephora data must be gold.
Oh, undoubtedly. and assisting with dynamic pricing strategies across different markets and product categories. Specific examples given include helping a team predict exactly when and in what quantities a specific limited edition Dior lipstick shade will sell out in a Tokyo boutique, or enabling the Hennessy team to precisely forecast seasonal demand shifts for different cognac blends in specific European markets.
So it's about using AI to manage the incredible complexity of a global luxury group, ensuring efficiency and accuracy behind the scenes.
Precisely. And the genius, according to the sources, is that Mary I never replaces the fundamental human touch that is so essential to luxury. It enhances it.
Because, as Arnault seems to believe, luxury is fundamentally a human experience at its core.
Absolutely. The intangible elements of luxury, the tactile feel of the finest leather, the appreciation for intricate, handmade craftsmanship, the personalized advice from a knowledgeable stylist in a beautiful boutique, these are deeply human moments. The role of technology in LVMH's model is to support these moments, to make them smoother, more informed, and more precise, but never to replace the human connection that is at the heart of the luxury transaction.
It's performance that happens behind the curtain, not performance art for public consumption.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Their tech strategy is about delivering effective, understated performance that directly supports the core business and the luxury experience, rather than seeking headlines for just being cutting edge.
Their approach to e-commerce also seems to fit this patient strategic model. They weren't the first movers online, were they?
No, they weren't. They didn't rush into selling their most exclusive items online overnight. They took a very careful, deliberate approach to digitalization, focusing on creating curated online experiences that maintain the same sense of luxury and exclusivity as walking into a physical store. They made strategic partnerships, for example, with Alibaba, to navigate the complexities of the crucial Chinese e-commerce market. They invested in platforms like Lyst to better understand how luxury discovery happens online. And they slowly and meticulously built out their own direct-to-consumer online platforms, ensuring that every digital touchpoint upheld the promise of luxury.
And that patient approach paid off, particularly with younger consumers who expect digital access.
Yes, the sources indicate that this careful, quality-focused approach to e-commerce has been successful. Their online sales continue to grow, particularly appealing to younger generations like Gen Z and millennials, who expect the convenience of digital channels but still demand authenticity and a high-quality, seamless experience that reflects the brand's prestige.
It sounds like, similar to his approach with acquisitions, Arnault waits, observes, and moves only when the timing and the execution can be done right, aligning with the core luxury values, not just jumping on the bandwagon.
That's a consistent pattern the sources highlight. He doesn't feel compelled to be the first into every new technology trend. He watches, he learns, and he moves when the technology is mature enough, and crucially, when it can be implemented in a way that genuinely enhances rather than detracts from the unique luxury experience. It's innovation without unnecessary noise.
And this quiet, precise approach to technology mirrors his overall leadership style we've been talking about.
Absolutely. It's characterized by relentless operational improvement, a quiet strategic approach, and incredibly precise execution, powered by technology that works diligently behind the scenes.
And this strategic use of internal technology, combined with their deep cultural integration and decentralized structure, gives LVMH a massive advantage, especially in today's volatile global environment, doesn't it?
Yeah, the sources really underscore the relevance of this calm, confident adaptability in the current climate of 2025. With ongoing global supply chain disruptions, persistent inflationary pressures impacting consumer behavior, and shifting market dynamics, LVMH's ability to navigate these challenges calmly, supported by this precise internal tech engine and flexible structure, provides them with a significant competitive edge.
It's like technology is their invisible superpower, enabling the human side of the business to shine.
That's perfectly put. It's how a group built on brands founded in the 18th and 19th centuries can feel incredibly relevant and fresh in the 21st. It's the unseen infrastructure that allows them to balance tradition and radical transformation so effectively. And it helps explain how they can simultaneously appeal to the world's wealthiest, most established families and, a curious, style-conscious 25-year-old. It's that blend of deep heritage, modern relevance, and unseen operational precision.
True innovation, it seems, doesn't need to shout about itself. It just needs to work, to elevate the experience, and to serve the core values of the business.
And for LVMH, those core values are inextricably linked to the human experience of luxury. Seems pretty clear.
And this combination of deep cultural integration, sophisticated, quiet technology, And a decentralized yet controlled structure is what ultimately makes LVMH so remarkably resilient, even when facing significant external challenges. That seems to be the key takeaway.
That's the final crucial piece of the puzzle the sources highlight. Yeah. LVMH is not merely built for growth during prosperous times. It is fundamentally architected for resilience, designed to absorb shocks and navigate global crises more effectively than maybe most other businesses.
Because even an empire built on luxury isn't immune to economic downturns or market volatility. They still feel it.
Absolutely not, no. The sources are clear about this, detailing that 2024, for instance, was a genuinely challenging year for the luxury sector globally, and LVMH definitely felt the impact.
What were the specific markers of that challenge for LVMH, according to the sources? How bad was it?
Well, the group reported $84.7 billion in revenue for the year, which represented a 1% decline year-on-year compared to 2023, which for them is unusual.
Right, they're used to growth.
Exactly. While the fourth quarter did show a small recovery with 1% growth, the overall trend indicated a softening of global demand, particularly noticeable in previously very robust markets like the US and China.
And some divisions were hit harder than others within the group.
Yes, the sources specifically pointed to significant struggles within the wines and spirits division, Moët Hennessy. That sector experienced sharp drops in both sales and profitability, leading to a substantial $1.5 billion in negative cash flow for the year, and unfortunately resulting in over 1,200 layoffs.
Oh, that's significant.
It highlighted that even within a diversified portfolio, specific segments can face considerable headwinds.
That sounds like a situation where many companies would panic and maybe resort to drastic measures, cutting corners everywhere. What was Arnault's response, according to the sources?
Well, the sources contrast his actions with what they describe as the typical panic response: widespread, indiscriminate cost-cutting, maybe slashing prices in ways that can devalue the brand long-term, or pulling back drastically on investment. Arnault's response is characterized as precision over panic.
Adaptive strategies rather than just reactive ones.
Exactly. He allowed a degree of real-time strategic adjustment at the brand level, but with immense precision. For example, in markets like China, where economic shifts were pushing some consumers towards more accessible price points within luxury, select brands were allowed to employ subtle pricing elasticity, tailoring offers regionally without resorting to heavy, globally visible discounts that would dilute their prestige worldwide. It was about localized adjustment, not broad devaluations.
Smart. And what about leadership and operations? Any changes there?
There were strategic leadership adjustments, including bringing in a new CEO for the Moët Hennessy division in early 2025 to specifically address the challenges in that sector. Across the group, there was a focus on tightening operations, but again, with precision. This meant quietly optimizing logistics networks to reduce costs and improve efficiency, strategically adjusting marketing spend to focus on the most impactful channels and regions, and managing inventory with increased discipline to avoid overstock, which can necessitate discounts and really harm brand image.
One of LVMH's most powerful inherent strengths in navigating these difficult periods seems to be its geographic diversification. They're everywhere.
Yeah, this is highlighted as a core source of resilience. The empire is so geographically spread that when one major region softens, others can potentially compensate. While the US and Europe experienced slowing demand in 2024, growth engines emerged elsewhere.
Like where specifically? Where was the growth coming from?
The sources point to Asia, particularly Southeast Asia and India, becoming increasingly significant growth drivers. By 2025, Asia as a whole accounted for 24% of LVMH's global sales, with countries like Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines demonstrating double-digit growth rates, helping to offset declines elsewhere.
And LVMH didn't just passively observe this. They actively invested in these growing markets, right?
They doubled down locally, as the sources describe it. This meant strategically investing and expanding their retail footprint in these growth regions, building deeper partnerships with local influencers who resonate with the target demographic, and fine-tuning product assortments to better match local tastes and cultural preferences, whether that's offering exclusive colors in boutiques in Bangkok or enhancing personalized clienteling services in cities like Ho Chi Minh City. It was fast action, but executed with surgical accuracy, tailored to the nuances of each local market.
Even the cultural touch points we discussed earlier, like the Olympics, play a role during times of volatility.
They do seem to. The Paris Olympics sponsorship in 2024, revisited in this context, is seen as providing a unique emotional and cultural anchor during a period of economic uncertainty. By aligning French luxury with a globally unifying event centered on excellence and heritage, LVMH reinforced its values and narrative on a massive scale, which provided a different kind of strength beyond just sales figures. It projects confidence.
And the continued diversification of their portfolio beyond core fashion and spirits also adds layers of resilience, I imagine.
Absolutely. The strategic expansion into ultra-luxury hospitality and real estate with brands like Cheval Blanc and Bulgari Hotels is key. These ventures offer immersive lifestyle experiences that can turn customers into lifetime clients and diversify revenue streams beyond the sale of physical goods.
Right. Experiences matter.
Yeah. Their recent moves into sports, like acquiring a stake in Paris FC and exploring opportunities in Formula One, are seen as ways to connect with younger, experience-driven audiences and further broaden the group's reach and resilience across different consumer passion points.
It sounds like a fundamental principle here is about controlling the narrative, especially when facing challenges. Don't let the crisis define you.
The sources strongly emphasize this point. Arnault understands that luxury thrives on confidence, the confidence of the customer in the brand, and the brand's confidence in itself. This confidence, particularly during turbulent times, comes from meticulous preparation and clear strategy, not improvisation. You control the story of your brand, your group, and your response before a crisis has a chance to define or destabilize you.
So while LVMH certainly isn't completely immune to global economic forces, it's designed to be remarkably resilient compared to maybe others.
That's the conclusion drawn from the sources, yes. The combination of a deeply diversified portfolio across sectors and geographies, combined with adaptive, precise leadership and underpinned by strategic strengths like deep cultural integration and effective quiet technology, allows LVMH to absorb external shocks better than almost any other global business. It's not an accident of size, it's deliberate architecture, as the sources call it.
Built explicitly not just for meteoric growth, but for fundamental, long-term resilience. That's the key.
Designing a fortress in silk and gold, flexible and adaptable at the edges to respond to market shifts, but unshakable and stable at its core because of its strategic foundations and diversified strengths.
This deep dive truly paints a picture of a leader and a business model built not on loudness or flash, but on immense precision, patience, and quiet conviction. It's quite something.
It demonstrates that dominance in the modern global economy, particularly in a sector as nuanced as luxury, isn't always achieved through aggressive posturing, but often through deliberate, strategic, and very long-term thinking.
Chasing meaning and timelessness over fleeting trends, moving with deliberate purpose instead of just rushing, mastering diversity across brands, across markets, and crucially, in the people he empowers to lead.
It's a powerful blueprint for enduring success, it seems.
So let's try to distill this for you listening. Based on the sources we've explored today in our deep dive into Bernard Arnault's world, what are some of the core, timeless lessons from his playbook that you might consider applying to your own ventures, your own leadership, your own career? What are the takeaways?
Okay, well, first, I'd say the profound power of patience. Think not just in the next quarter or the next year, but in decades. True vision is about building foundations that are solid enough to withstand the inevitable storms and shifts, strong enough to last, rather than just optimizing for immediate gratification.
Right, build for the long haul. Second,
maybe cultivate the ability to see potential where others see decline. Don't just look for opportunities when they're already at their peak. Look for undervalued assets, whether that's a business, a project, or even an idea that have a fundamental soul and inherent value, and believe in your ability to revive and elevate them through focused energy and creativity. Find the hidden gem.
Okay, third lesson.
Third, learn to empower others while maintaining a guiding framework. Centralize your core values, your non-negotiable standards, and your overall strategic direction, but give the individual parts, the teams, the people you lead, the autonomy and space they need to breathe, innovate, and lead authentically within that clear structure. Trust but verify, perhaps.
Makes sense. Fourth,
understand how to use technology to elevate, not simply automate. Deploy technology strategically, often behind the scenes, to enhance the core human experience and improve operations with precision. Technology should serve your fundamental values and goals, not become the goal itself. Don't chase shiny objects.
Good advice. And finally, the fifth takeaway.
And finally, actively build for resilience, not just for revenue growth. Design your plans, your ventures, your endeavors with diversification and adaptability in mind. Assume turbulence is coming, because it probably is, and build structures that can absorb shocks rather than solely focusing on maximizing growth during the calm periods. Prepare for winter.
In the end, the sources suggest Bernard Arnault didn't just redefine what luxury is or who can lead it. He offered a masterclass in a different kind of leadership, one that demonstrates true power doesn't always need to speak loudly, but is most effective when it moves with absolute clarity, is deeply rooted in enduring value and culture, and is driven by quiet conviction and that unwavering long-term vision.
A quiet strategy, meticulously executed, can indeed be the most powerful one. Seems to be the case here.
So as you go about your day, here's a final thought for you to consider, drawing from the heart of this deep dive. In a world that often rewards noise, celebrates speed, and pressures us all for instant results, how can embracing some of these quiet strategies, patience, precision, empowering others, building resilience become your path to leading or succeeding with greater clarity, conviction, and perhaps a more enduring impact? It's something to think about.